let's just call it what it is. Every year in fantasy football, tight ends and the tight end position as a whole feels absolutely valueless. On most given weeks, it feels like if you don't have the guy, the number one tight end in the entire league, you basically get the same value as the 15th, 16th best tight end in the NFL. But what if I told you I have a way to make sure you never draft a waste of a tight end pick ever again in fantasy? Would you keep watching? Because we've all been there before when you draft somebody, maybe it was Dalton Kincaid this year, that just don't get it done. And I'm not here to say that tight end is such an important position to have in fantasy football. I'm actually saying the opposite. I actually believe we can crack the Da Vinci's code of how to draft a good tight end. And before I explain what I'm talking about, let's roll the intro. So let's not beat around the bush here. Drafting tight ends can feel very random. It's very random that you can either end up with a top 10 tight end or one of the worst tight ends that you could possibly play as soon as you start your drafts. We're going to break down how to identify key players that you should be drafting in 2025 at the tight end position. So first, let's go ahead and look at the top 10 tight ends in PPR from weeks 1 to 17. Because remember, if you watched the running back video, if you didn't, make sure you go watch that running back research video. We don't play fantasy football in week 18. I don't know if your league does that, but it's a cupcake league if you do play that way. Let's just call it what it is. You play from weeks 1 to week 17 because nobody really ends up playing in week 18 anyway. So let's go over and let's identify who we should be drafting for next year in 2025. But before we do that, let's look at the top 10 tight ends of 2024. So obviously, unless you live under a rock, you've heard of Brock Bowers. You know Brock Bowers was so much better than every other tight end in fantasy football this year. So he's tight end 1. As we keep going down the list, more familiar names. George Kittle, Trey McBride. Great. We all understand that. At 4, we have Jonnu Smith. Now, I have videos on this channel. You can go check them out somewhere down below. I was banging on the drum to draft Jonnu Smith this year because I saw the potential in a new scheme in a vertical type of offense like the Dolphins, though they were not much of a vertical offense this year, if I'm going to be honest. Just my projection and my outlook was that they would find opportunities and targets for Jonnu Smith in this offense. Now let's keep going. Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews, great. We all know who they are. We're all familiar with their names. They're very frequent flyers on this list. Let's just keep it a buck. Then we get to Zach Ertz. Now, Zach Ertz was somebody that most definitely was not highly drafted. Sure, I've seen his name going around as a sneaky tight end that you should be drafting in your leagues. How many of us actually took it serious? I'm not sure. I wasn't that ready to take it serious. I'm a Ben Sinnott truther, so maybe that's why I'm a little biased. But Zach Ertz is coming in at number 7. Then we have Sam Laporta, a very familiar name as he finished tight end 1 overall last year. Then we have Tucker Kraft and David Njoku. Now, David Njoku is starting to feel like a frequent flyer on this list because he's had top 10 finishes in the past. But let's take a look at year over year. How many of these 10 players finished top 10 last year in fantasy football? So I'm going to pull up a list right now. This is the top 10 from 2023, just a year ago. And if we look at the names, we see a few familiar ones, but about half the list doesn't carry over from year to year. So Sam Laporta, Travis Kelce, they carry over. George Kittle, he carries over. David Njoku, he carries over. And Trey McBride carries over into 2024. In 2023 and 2024, we have 5 top 10 tight ends that carry over. Half of this list may not be top 10 in 2025. And you know what we're going to do when we draft in 2025? We're going to go off of, for the most part, ranking them as the 10 best in 2024 are probably going to be somewhere close to the 10 best again in 2025. It's probably not likely someone's going to rank Kyle Pitts as the top 10 tight end. There's going to be guys that break into the top 10 category that don't make it over from last year. And if you don't believe me, let's look at 2022 as an example. So now from 2023 to 2022, we're going to see how many of these tight ends carry over. And you're going to realize that the few big names and big game tight ends are the ones that carry over year. So, again, in 2023 and 2024, Sam Laporta, Travis Kelce, George Kittle, David Njoku, and Trey McBride carried over as top 10 tight ends. Now let's see how many guys on this 2023 list cracked the top 10 in 2022. I'm going to pull up the list right now. So let's take a look. Travis Kelce, TJ Hockenson, Mark Andrews did not finish his top 10 in 2023, but he did in 2022. He does not make the cut. George Kittle makes the cut, as George Kittle usually makes the cut. If you notice, the upper echelon tight ends do carry over from year to year. And that's why their ADP is so high every single year. So we have those three. We have Evan Ingram. We have Dalton Schultz. That's it. End of list. So again, 5 guys carry over top 10 status from 2022 to 2023. So half of this list. Now let's look at how many of these 2022 guys carry over into 2021 as top 10 tight ends. Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, George Kittle, starting to see a pattern. Dalton Schultz, and nobody else on this list is finishing top 10 year over year. So now what do we know? We know, let's go back to 2024 because we have enough sample size to determine that half of these guys aren't going to carry over. And that just is what it is. Maybe even more of them won't. Maybe 6 will carry over. Best case scenario, I'll break it down now. Brock Bowers in 2024. I'd like to say it's very likely he finishes top 10 in 2025 again. As long as he stays healthy, I'd like to believe he's top 10 again. Trey McBride. I'd like to believe he's top 10 again. Travis Kelce. Given his age, given that Rashee Rice is coming back from injury, I'll still give you the benefit of the doubt. That's 4. Mark Andrews. As long as he can stay healthy, so even he has a question mark in this. I'll give it to you, though. That's 5. Zach Ertz, not repeating. Sam Laporta, I'll give it to you. Now I got both hands up. That's 6 tight ends. Then we have Tucker Kraft, who really only made it there because high touchdowns, does not get nearly as much targets as the rest of these guys on this list. Or at least in Andrews' case, he also had a lot of touchdowns, which bolstered him. But we've seen him in the past get that workload, get that volume. I'm not going to say Tucker Kraft is going to repeat. And David Njoku, given their offensive situation, if Jameis Winston's not playing 17 games there, or someone that's not named Deshaun Watson that is very, very good, I can't guarantee that he's going to make it. So best case scenario, I'm giving you 6 guys that carry over. Now, our job now is we have to find the 4 guys that are not carrying over. So let's look at guys that were on the cusp of top 10 this year. Pat Freiermuth. Questionable. I'm going to go on the verge and say that it's possible, but not going to draft him with a middle round pick. Maybe I'll draft him later on in the draft like I did this year, and maybe it'll work out. Hunter Henry, I'm probably staying away from that one as well. Cade Otton. Cade Otton is a very interesting one. Assuming that Chris Godwin leaves in free agency, I know Jalen McMillan is going to take a step up, but they're still going to need a presence like Cade Otton to take some of these targets. Now, he was a lot hotter before Jalen McMillan got involved, so it's possible that Jalen McMillan takes him out of fantasy relevancy, but I'll say he has a shot of cracking the top 10 next year. Kyle Pitts. I think he has a chance to crack top 10. I know we haven't seen it very often. He's only done it his rookie year. But this is a guy you have to keep in mind that probably won't be drafted very highly. These are the guys that people are going to want. Maybe Jonnu Smith won't be drafted so high. Maybe people will just rule that as an outlier season. People are going to want to take Tucker Kraft early. People are going to want to take David Njoku. And when you consider how much of a drop-off it is from the top guys, you could pretty much just fish out somebody from that's middle of the pack and just hope that they push themselves in the upper echelon. We know, like I said, 5, maybe 6 are going to carry over. So let's just call it what it is. Those are the high ADP price tags. That's your Brock Bowers. That's your Travis Kelce, your Sam Laporta, your Mark Andrews, your George Kittle, your Trey McBride. Those guys are going to warrant a high ADP. But if you miss out on those guys, there's no reason not to take a chance on somebody that had no business finishing in the top 10 in 2024 that could easily do it in 2025. Somebody that didn't make the top 10, Jake Ferguson can make top 10 next year. Who else are they going to throw the ball to besides CeeDee Lamb? These are quality options at tight end, and they're not going to cost you anything this year in your 2025 drafts. There's no way somebody's going to be like, Jake Ferguson must be in the top 8 of fantasy tight ends. Like, nobody's going to say that. Once those top 5, 6 guys go, it's an absolute crapshoot. Anything goes at this point. So remember that. When you're drafting in 2025 and you miss out on these tight ends that you feel like can't miss, there's no reason for you to try to fit the square peg in a round hole with this one. There's no reason for you to feel like you have to grab a tight end in a certain round if you don't get one of the guys. Now, if you want to go grab one of the elite guys, totally fine with that. You might lack at wide receiver, you might lack at quarterback, you might even lack at running back. But that's the price you're going to pay to get a guy like a Sam Laporta, like a Travis Kelce, like a George Kittle. And another aspect of what makes tight ends and the tight end position such a crapshoot, but you can still find a way to get the job done with whoever you draft later if you don't take a good player. Just don't go by the rankings. Is look at this list in front of us now. This is the 2024 top 10 tight end list. David Njoku is 10. Jonnu Smith is 4. Trey McBride is up here at 3. Mark Andrews is at 6. Now, let's break the 2024 season in half. I'm going to show you the splits of weeks 1 to 9 and weeks 9 to 17. And we're going to see how different these lists actually end up looking when we break the season in half versus the totality of the 2024 season. So here we have weeks 1 through 9, top 10 tight ends. Brock Bowers, this is weeks 1 to 9. George Kittle, Cade Otton, who doesn't even finish in the top 10 but was elite the first few weeks of the season. Trey McBride, Travis Kelce, Tucker Kraft, Kyle Pitts, who doesn't even finish the list as a top 10 guy in totality of the season. Hunter Henry, Cole Kmet, and Dalton Kincaid. Notice how Mark Andrews isn't even in the top 10, and he somehow finishes as tight end 6 overall. Now, let's look at weeks 9 to 17. Jonnu Smith is number 1. Jonnu Smith wasn't even a name that I mentioned in the top 10. Sam Laporta, who got hot at the end of the year. Mark Andrews, who got hot at the end of the year. David Njoku, Zach Ertz, TJ Hockenson. So now, if you're rolling in the second half of your season and you had a TJ Hockenson playing, it feels like you got a good draft pick out of that. Obviously, he came into the year with injury. Who knows, maybe he could have finished as a top 10 guy. But what I do know for sure is that he's not a top 10 tight end here. He's very likely to break into the top 10. Just because he's not here now doesn't mean he can't be in 2025. So again, let's review. Half or even close to half of the top 10 tight ends are not going to carry over in 2025. How many of these top 10 tight ends on your ranking sheet or wherever you get your rankings from are going to tell you that most of these guys are going to repeat as top 10 tight ends? I'm sure a lot of them will. I'm sure a lot of them won't have a Kyle Pitts, Jake Ferguson. Now, of course, the outliers are the outliers. Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, George Kittle, Trey McBride, those guys stay healthy. They are the outliers. We could even put Sam Laporta in that list. And I believe Brock Bowers is that too. So that's 6. But now it's our job to go find the other 4. The other 4 guys that nobody has even on their radar for this year. It's our job to go find those guys. I really hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe down below. It costs you absolutely nothing. Would mean the absolute world to me because I'm putting in work. I'm putting in night and day hours into this to find research, to find information, to find anything that's going to give us an advantage into the 2025 season. And it's not going to stop. We're going to keep doing this all off season. So you better be prepared. you better be subscribed. And if you're already subscribed, make sure you smash that like button for your boy. You disagree with what I'm saying? Do you think there's a tight end that didn't finish in the top 10 this year that's a for sure shoo-in to do it next year? Let me know in the comments down below. Let's have a discussion about it. And as always, thank you so much for watching. My name is Turtle. This is Outlier Fantasy. Yeah, I bet you like I could do that now, right? Shout out to my friend Mike who hooked me up with the Outlier Fantasy sweatshirt. It's a one of one, so don't ask about it. It ain't merch. I ain't cool enough to do merch. I don't have enough subscribers to be making merch. But my name is Turtle. This is Outlier Fantasy, or whichever one you want to point to. And I'll see you in the next video.